Okay, so I want to give you guys an example of operations on polynomials. And so we have a polynomial here where we have a couple of operations. We'll talk about that in a second. But we're asked to perform the operation, so all of the operations, and then we're also asked to identify the degree and the leading coefficient of the polynomial. Here it's kind of hard to see what maybe the degree is and what the leading coefficient is, but after we perform the operations, it'll be a little bit more clear. So if I look here, I have 2x minus 1 in parentheses, x plus 3, and then minus 3 times the quantity x plus 3. So whenever we see these parentheses, we know we're multiplying. And then we have a minus sign and some more multiplication. So we just have to remember order of operation always when we're simplifying, right? You might remember it as PEMDAS or please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, right? That just kind of tells us the operation. So we need to make sure we get rid of those parentheses first by using distributive property. If you use the box method to multiply out, that's fine. You can do that as well, right? So when I multiply here, I'll just kind of show with maybe FOIL if you use that, that also works. We're multiplying each term in this first quantity by each term in the second quantity. So 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times 3 would be 6x. And then I'm going to do the same thing. Let me get a different color. I'm going to do the same thing with the second piece here. Negative 1 times x is negative 1x. Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. Now at least I've gotten rid of the parentheses and I've multiplied everything out. Okay, and then I'm going to have to come over to this side and do the exact same thing. I am going to treat this minus sign as a negative 3, right? That helps me to kind of not forget that I'm subtracting everything. So it's like subtract 3 times this whole quantity. So I'm going to put negative 3 times x. I'm just going to highlight that so we can see we're using this entire piece here. As long as I'm using the operation in front of the number as a sign, that's fine. So negative 3 times x gives me negative 3x, and negative 3 times positive 3 gives me negative 9. And now I've at least done all the multiplication. We're good here. There's no exponents. There's no additional multiplication that I can do because I don't know what x equals, so I'm done there. There's no division. Now I can do my adding and subtracting. And we know that adding and subtracting go left to right. All right, so I'm just going to start. Whenever I add, I do have to remember like terms. And I know we know this, but it's just kind of a review. So we remember, if I have like terms, great, let me add or subtract them, let me combine them. If I don't, I just kind of leave it. So if I look here, 2x squared, that's the only x squared term. So I'm going to leave it as 2x squared. And then I look and I say, oh, I have a 6x, I have a negative 1x, and I have a negative 3x, right? So those three terms should be combined together. So 6 minus 1 is 5, minus 3 is 2. So I'm going to put 2x. And then the last piece is, well, I have a negative 3 and I have a negative 9. You have to remember to keep the sign that's in front of the number with the number. So now I have negative 12. So now I've simplified, which I was asked to do, perform the operations, which are multiplication and some combining like terms, right? Adding and subtracting. And then the last piece says identify the degree and the leading coefficient. Okay, so from the video you guys watched, you'll see that the degree is just what's my highest exponent, right? I have an x squared. I have really an x to the 1, even though we don't put the 1 there, and I have an x to the 0. So my degree would be 2. And then my leading coefficient is, well, whatever the coefficient of that term, which had the degree, right, the highest exponent, that's going to be my leading coefficient. So here's my largest exponent. The coefficient in front would be my leading coefficient. So I'm going to just call it LC, and that in this case is also 2. Okay, so go ahead and practice a few on your own, and that should help you kind of get through just our review of operations on polynomials.